I know you saw me spill that tea, and I appreciate you not saying anything about it. Alright, so we talked about the best. We have to talk about the worst. Some of these on here I hate more than others, but it is worth noting that I didn't give any 1 or 2 stars out this year. I think a lot of these I was generous. I was more generous than I needed to be. But I'm going to try to be unbiased and just be very realistic in my criticism here. For some of these books, you've already heard how I feel about them, but some of them maybe I haven't actually delved into. Again, I write reviews, so you may have read my reviews on Goodreads if you follow those, but let's just start at the beginning, shall we? Let's just start at the beginning. One of the very first books I read this year was The Colorado Kid by Stephen King. And I really like this cover. This is not the one you typically see, even though it has a huge, ugly sticker on it. And making this list made me realize I probably actually don't want to keep this. I think I'm going to put it in my library at school because I didn't like it. And I had no reason to not like it. This book literally tells you the mystery is unsolved at the beginning, and it hasn't been solved. And so you're reading a mystery novel about like a mysterious death and all about the ways they've already tried to solve it. And in the end, they go, yep, sometimes it'd be like that. And I hated that. I hated it so much. I'd like to meet the person who this is their favorite of the like hard case crimes that Stephen King has written. Joyland was amazing. I read earlier this year, around the same time actually, and it was very good. This is not very good. This is annoying and frustrating, and there's no point. It's just 2 old men talking about like that one case that they couldn't solve to this young reporter girl that's working with them. And I'm like, this would have worked as a segment of a larger Stephen King novel where, you know, they were supposed to form this relationship so that they could solve an actual murder later in the book. That's fine. I can live with that one. I cannot live with this. This is a cock tease of a book. And apologies for that. If you heard me say something inappropriate, no you didn't. Alright, the next book is also the only other one that I have a physical copy of because I've either gotten rid of these books or they're in my classroom library or I listen to them on the audiobook. And that is Angel Catbird. I don't know what it says about me that the first 2 on this list are by 2 of my favorite authors. And that neither one of these made it onto the favorites of the year. That's telling. That's telling me something. I don't know what it is, but maybe I'll figure it out. Angel Catbird is bad. It is a comic. It is a comic about cat and mouse and dog and bird people. This guy, he gets something. I'm trying to remember exactly how he gets the cat and bird powers. One of them is his cat gets fucking run over on page. He gets hit by a car and dies. And then there's an owl, and somehow all of them together, it's like Captain Planet, but like Angel Catbird. And this is propaganda. And I mean, it says it is. It says it's propaganda because it's sponsored by like the Ottawa Society for like keeping your cats indoors. I know that's not the name, but like that's their point. Is like, hey, outdoor cats, they're bad for the environment. They're bad for birds and other small creatures. Also, they have a more likelihood of dying early, and all that's good. Tell people that. They need to know about the like hazards of outdoor cats, and especially like not spayed and neutered outdoor cats. But like this was a weird vehicle for that message. It was not very good as like a comic goes, and then it was like you'd get fun facts every few pages about, yeah, did you know cats could do so and so? Yeah, there lies danger. Oh yeah, that's the cat gonna get hit by a car, and on the next page, yep, right there, yep, right there. But then you get these fun little facts at the bottom. Outdoor cats have a fraction of their lifespan of indoor cats, as low as a third. They frequently get hit by cars and are much risk of contracting diseases, getting lost, and fighting with wildlife as other cats, poisoning, and parasites. And it's just kind of, it's just too much. It's just too much. It didn't have a point. I'm sure there's more issues of this. Maybe I would be interested in reading. But as of right now, I just don't have any interest in picking it up. Some of the character designs were cool. Some of them were very weird. But this is Angel Catbird, the comic about keeping your cats inside. I don't know what the actual plot was. I think there was a mouse thing, like a rat. Who knows? Who knows? It wasn't good. It wasn't good. That tea is good, though. The next book on the list I do not have. It is in my classroom library because I did think it did enough of what it promised to be good for a high school reader, but I do not get the hype. I read Wilder Girls by Rory Power for a video where Books and Lala did an Enneagram video. And Type 4, she recommended 2 books that I hadn't read. And so Wilder Girls was one of those books, and I did not like it. I think I gave it 3 stars. I can't remember all of my exact feedback, but mostly I knew the ending was going to disappoint me. I knew going in that the ending is kind of open-ended. You don't really know what's going on. But the plot didn't know what it was doing for most of it. And having read 2 Rory Power books, it's making me think that's a power problem where it doesn't do anything for a long time and then it does it all in the last 2 chapters. But our characters weren't likable, and not in a sense of like every character has to be likable, but I just didn't care about the relationships between them. I did enjoy sort of the antagonistic relationship our main character and her crush had, but it wasn't expanded enough for me to really get anything out of it. I feel like I needed more backstory and like seeing them in school together rather than just being told how things are. And I feel like it was too short to give me the character development it needed for some of these folks. I cared more about some of the side characters that died than I did our main characters. I mean, it was good as far as like body horror goes. The idea of a parasite is just, oh God, I hate the idea of parasites. But I just didn't care about the characters at all, and the ending was a letdown. And it felt like it was doing too much there at the end. It was just doing too much. And it kept switching POVs, and I don't remember liking one of the POVs. Like, I think one of the POVs was really boring or frustrating or not helpful, like, to forwarding the plot. So I did not like Wilder Girls. It was not my cup of tea. Haha. But I did put it in my classroom library because I figured I have some kids who would like that. That access to horror and the representation that it has in it. The next book on here, I listened on audiobook, and I did it, I think I read this before the Asian Readathon because I was like, gosh, if I just saved it for a little bit. And I may have read it for Buzzwordathon. I think there was like, oh yeah, Sun. I read it for the Sun. Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro is not good. It's not good. And it sucks because he wrote one of my other like almost favorites of the year. He wrote Remains of the Day, which is about a butler sort of reflecting on his life as he takes a vacation for the first time like ever. And it's bittersweet and sad, and it's very romantic without like having a romance in it. But Clara and the Sun is a sci-fi, like speculative fiction, and it is not good. Clara is a robot. She's like an android kind of thing, cyborg. I don't know what they're called here. But she's made by a company who literally just sells these as friends. They sell these people as friends, and they have like the window displays, and they have like a storefront. And so the very beginning of the story is just Clara reflecting on how she likes to be able to sit in the window when it's her turn to sit in the window. It reminded me of that Twilight Zone episode where like the mannequin girl comes back to the mall because it was like her time to be human and walk around, and like she went too long. But Clara is very naive. She's very innocent. And you expect that at the beginning because she's a robot who has no concept of like how humans and life works. And she watches a little girl and her mom walk around, and the little girl comes in and talks to her. And eventually, a couple chapters in, they buy Clara. They are talked into it. They were almost talked out of it, but the shopkeeper is like, Clara's really special. And I want Clara to be special, but she's not. Clara develops zero through this novel. Clara never makes connections on things that easily can be connected. And it is revealed to us, Clara and obviously the little girl, I don't remember her name, it doesn't matter. They're besties, they hang out. There's a boy that lives across the way that's like not well off, which by the way, I'm going to call the girl she's like living with Jess. I think it starts with a J, so we're going to call her Jess so I have something to call her. But Jess's family is wealthy as hell. Her and her mom have money. Like, they have money. And in fact, you have to have money to be able to afford one of these like friend things. So they have money. they hang out with the poor boy across the way. He can't afford college because his, mom is sick, but him and the girl had promised they were going to get married when they're older, and it's cute. And at some point you think that, oh, like Clara's going to end up with the guy, maybe, and she thinks about stuff like that, but not in any kind of emotional investment. She just kind of says things. And it is revealed that Jess, the girl, is deathly ill and very sick. And in fact, they are just this is the big spoiler alert if you were planning on reading Clara and the Sun. Clara is hanging out with Jess to learn how Jess works so they can put Clara's brain in a Jess robot when she dies. That is the point of the novel, is they want to replicate another Jess, and they're using Clara to make sure everything is perfectly fidelic in that transfer. The mom says it. She's like, you have to watch everything she does. You need to be able to mimic it. And she practices with mimicking Jess's behavior, actions, words, thoughts, because Clara doesn't have any of her own. That's what I'm saying. It's just boring to read from that perspective when that robot doesn't feel bad about that. She doesn't feel anything about dying. And it also has this awful kind of concept of the rich taking advantage of the working class. Like, this wealthy young girl may die of a disease, but we aren't going to do that because we have the money to stop it. So we're going to make a fake her, and we're going to take this android who can't consent because it's basically a slave, and we're going to make it be the brain for this machine. It's weird. It was weird. And then it ends... The girl doesn't get sick. She ends up living, and her and the guy don't end up together. And then Clara just sits and dies. I think that's the implication, is she just sits in a field and fucking dies, because she's antiquated now. She's like obsolete, and like she's given the option to improve or to adapt, and she's like, no, it's fine. And she thinks, oh, I forgot. She thinks the sun is magic. That's why Clara and the sun, she thinks the sun is magic because she runs on the sun. Like, they are like not necessarily solar powered, but the solar helps them. And she thinks, oh, if we just put Jess in the sunlight, she'll be fine. And they bring her to a barn and they put her in the sun and she's fine. And so that's how Clara dies. She sits in the sun, and I'm sure, maybe there's a metaphor I'm not getting. But it was just stupid and boring. And I'm like, oh no, I've wasted time on this. The audiobook was narrated good as a positive. Let's move on, because I didn't like the other ones either. I listened to an audiobook of The Key to You and Me by Jane Robin Brown. And it promised the world to me. It said horse girls in North Carolina falling in love. And I did not get that, and I'm mad about it. So, The Key to You and Me is about a girl who lives up north. I think she's in New York. She's in somewhere that's a city. And she goes to North Carolina to work with her grandmother because she wants to be an Olympic, horsewoman. She wants to ride horses in the Olympics. There, she meets a girl who works for her dad at, a nail salon, and she doesn't know how to drive. And so, girl from New York is going to teach girl from North Carolina how to drive. And they flirt. You're promised a romance between these two girls, but do you know who you get a romance with in this novel? The girl who won't admit that she likes girls, which is the one from North Carolina, she can't confess that she likes girls, that she thinks she likes girls. The other girl is out proud, and she's only flirting with this girl and taking pictures because she wants to make her ex-girlfriend jealous. Anyway, you get a relationship between the not out girl and a 20-something-year-old woman. And it's gross. It's pedophilic. And I just think we're glossing over that in a weird way, that it's it's a cutesy little romance with horse girls. But that girl is being lied to because she thinks the girl is of age. She thinks she's in college. And so she pursues a relationship with her, and they take her to karaoke. But that one's kind of wrong too, because she's got some biphobia issues because her ex-girlfriend leaves her for a guy, and she constantly makes comments about things being easier for her because she's with a guy, and maybe she didn't really like girls. And I don't know, the vibes were off on this one. Maybe someone will like it, maybe someone will pick it up and they won't pick it apart like I did, but I was very unsettled by the age gap in that one relationship. And then at the end, the girls are just together. Like, I was promised a romance between these two, and I got a whole book of this other two, and then they broke up, and these two are together. So it was a little bit, of false advertisement, I think, in some of what it was promised. And I don't know, it just, parts of it were a little bit uncomfy. I just don't like the lying and miscommunication of age. I don't think that's not cute. That's not a cute romance trope. That's weird. Like, that's kind of gross. But anyway, that was The Key to You and Me. I just didn't like it. The next one also had potential and let me down. It was Miranda in Milan by Catherine Duckett. It had a great premise. What if Miranda from The Tempest, who immediately fell in love at the end of The Tempest, goes back to Milan and is suddenly like, oh, ladies exist too. And that's fair. This is someone who was not raised with gender norms necessarily, any more so than like Prospero would have raised her. She thinks the new men who showed up are beautiful. Wait till she sees women. You know, like that's a fair concept. But this book was too short to do what it did, and it did some weird stuff. It was a female romance. Miranda ends up kind of hooking up with her lady in waiting. They are very quick to hook up. And again, that's why this book is way too small. I needed a slow burn. I needed them to kind of like, the power imbalance like factors in. But no, the girl lady in waiting she's a witch. She is the victim of some like racial stuff. And she speaks in Shakespeare's language. Like, basically she recites sonnets to Miranda. And I think that was what annoyed me too. I'm like, I know Shakespeare retellings are going to use Shakespeare's words because it's kind of a fun thing to do. But it was all of it. It was so much of it, proportionally, because the book was so small. It just felt like someone else was writing it. And then, my God, the twist ending, like, Prospero's evil. Miranda, your mom's still alive, but she's just a big hulking monster thing. We have to sneak out and run away, and we're going to go back to our island. It wasn't good. It just wasn't good. No one had any kind of time to develop. Nobody had any time to develop, especially not Miranda. And it didn't know what it was doing for too long, and then it just sort of rushed the ending. So no, don't. Miranda Milan, I put it in my classroom library just in case, but it's not really good. I will admit to not remembering a lot about The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. I listened to it for the week before school started while I was cleaning my room. And I remember thinking it was definitely atmospheric. It did have really good energy to it as far as like a murder mystery on like a college campus. But that's kind of where it goes wrong, and that's kind of it. The Maidens are a red herring. And I just find that lazy writing. The Maidens themselves are not what the book is about, and you don't really get to see anything happen with them. They don't want to be interviewed when they are. They're very evasive. They'll agree to an interview and then not be talked to. And the main lady is like a therapist, and she's just a terrible therapist. Like, some of the things she says to these girls because their friends are being murdered, she has them get in circles and leads conversations, but no therapist would ever ask and say the things that she's asking and saying. And I say they're a red herring because they are. The entire like stuff is orchestrated by, my God, what is the relationship? It's a college age girl that our main character has like care over. It's like her niece or something. And it turns out the niece was like screwing her husband, and because her husband has died previous to this book. It's so convoluted and stupid, and it comes out of nowhere, and it makes me sad because I was promised a dark academia, like murder mystery, and it's very much not that. So if any time someone wants to write that murder mystery about a group of girls who idolize their Greek professor to the point where they call themselves the Maidens, and like they do dastardly things on campus, please just write it. Just write it, because this was not it. This was not it. The next book on this list is Lost by Gregory Maguire. I'm not going to take a lot of time on this one. It just didn't really give what it was promised. It was a ghost story, I guess, but it was a weird ghost story. It had some possession stuff to it, and it just didn't feel satisfying in any kind of genuine way. It relied on some shock value for the plot, and the writing just wasn't good. Again, very sad that a bunch of my like favorite writers are on this list, but I just didn't like it. It just wasn't good. The last two books are by the same author, and they are, I think I dislike them both for the same reasons, If you've read my reviews, you've seen some stuff about these, but they are the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires and the Final Girl Support Group. I wanted to like these books desperately because I read my best friend's Exorcism and I loved it. So I wanted to stay sort of in this universe of these women-focused paranormal murder horror novels. And I was disappointed. Now, for Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, I was disappointed because I was promised a tight-knit group of women in a book club protecting their town from a vampire. And what I got was a bunch of just backstabbing, rude little bitches not taking their friends seriously. I thought the women and the teenagers in Best Friend's Exorcism were written so well that when I got to Southern Book Club, it made me sad because I'm like, grown women don't act like this. If you think someone is threatening your children, you take it seriously. They let their husbands, oh my God, the husbands, I wanted to murder them with my bare hands. And I know that's writing, but also it was overkill. Like, I hated them so much. My mom was a mom in the 90s. I know we were lower class than these women probably were. But I could not imagine my mother letting my father talk to her like that, letting any group of men do what they did to these women when they had genuine concerns of they thought someone was peddling drugs to their children and thought something bad was happening to their children. My mother would lose her mind. You didn't get a miraculous team up until like the very end of the book, and even then it's not because they really wanted to help each other. I was promised more than I was given. I wanted these women to be united, and they weren't. They really weren't. I don't understand how it went so badly, because they were really close. And then this guy moves to town, and they think something dangerous is going on, and they read in the book club true crime and thrillers and mysteries and murder. And so they know the signs. And the main character points it out. She's like, we read this stuff. We know. And they're like, oh, but that's fiction. No, it's not. It's true crime. These are real things that happen. It doesn't make sense that they would think that way. You know what I'm saying? Like, it does not make sense that they would not put the pieces together sooner, because it's like, well, those are books. Like, no, they're not. You're literally reading. You know what? It's not worth it. We got to move on to Final Girl Support Group. Final Girl Support Group was a letdown, and I think it was a letdown because I read My Heart is a Chainsaw, because it did that same kind of thing, but not as well. It's about final girls, and here's the things I like. All right, it's about final girls, like as if final girls were real, and then we based the movies off of them. So you have Scream, Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Nightmare on Elm Street, Leprechaun, and there's like a Christmas one, Black Christmas maybe, but not really Black Christmas. I think that one's kind of made up for this. But anyway, you've got these girls, and they've all grown up, and they have a support group. They meet like every now and then, and they talk about what's going on. The one we see from, the view we see from, is a girl who wasn't really a final girl. Like they pointed out, like, you're not really a final girl. You're a survivor, but you didn't kill your person, or you didn't injure your person. He's still alive. You just play dead. And she's very paranoid. She lives in like her little boxed-in house and everything. But this is another one where I'm told rather than shown that these women have deep relationships and care about each other as sisters. Because they fucking don't. They really don't. They go out of their way to throw each other under the bus and to ignore each other and to say you are being stupid, as if you have not all gone through this trauma. It just blows my mind how I can be reading one thing and be shown something completely different. And again, you got a nice last final act where they all come together and everything's fine, but it's not a payoff. You don't feel like you earned it, because the rest of the novel, you don't get those connections with those girls. They don't talk to each other. They ignore each other, actually, because a lot of them feel like this main character is an inconvenience to their life. And I don't know. I don't know what went wrong. I love the references to their movies, because they're not mentioned by name. They're mentioned by other names. And there's nice little bookends of reviews of the different movies and things. But it just, I believe if you really want that, you're going to read My Heart is a Chainsaw, because it does it better. It's giving Scream 4. as my review said, it's giving Scream 4, but not as good. And points are being made about sisterhood by someone who probably doesn't really need to be making those points. So anyway, that was my worst books. I was probably a little meaner than I needed to be, but I feel like the energy always gets to me in this video. Whenever I make the worst books, I can feel being possessed by the anger of wasting time. And so hopefully next year it won't be a long list. I did try to limit myself to this list, but there were some that weren't necessarily great. But again, I read a lot of really good books this year, so I'm truly thankful for that. Let me know what books you didn't like. Maybe I should avoid them. I'm never one to say don't read these books, because obviously some of you might pick these up and you actually like them. I would maybe not do that, but you do you. Bye. One day I'm going to learn how to pour without splattering it everywhere, but I don't think that day is today.